Okay, as you can see, I am going back to the font of wisdom that is Scott Garrity. Uh, I had tons of videos I'd made of this guy and deleted them, but I can't stay away. It's like a why can't I quit you situation. So let's go ahead and let's see what my boy is talking about today. Good old Garabys. Let's see what he's got going on today. It says the name of the video is Dungeons and Dragons has thankfully built a platform for terrible, desperate dungeon masters or disparate. Anyway, let's just hear what he's got to say. I'm sure it'll be hilarious.
Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the rest of the TTRPG scene. And we're going to talk about something really exceptional that Dungeons and Dragons does that other tabletop role playing games really have gone the other way on, and why it makes Dungeons and Dragons better than its OSR and indie competitors. And that is, it is my supposition. Dungeons and Dragons has made a powerful narrative tool for terrible, disparate players, right? Now, I've already talked in the past about Dungeons and Dragons being for terrible players. If you don't believe me, read.
One thing he keeps saying Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't know what he means. Does he mean like this? Because when I say Dungeons and Dragons, I mean this. This is the Advanced Dungeon Masters guide by Gary Gygax. He wrote that book, right? So he keeps saying Dungeons and Dragons, but to quote my good friend Inigo Montoya, I do not think he means what he think he means. Because when he says Dungeons and Dragons, I mean versus the OSR, it's like, what are you talking about? I mean, surely you're not talking about 5e, but I know he is. I'm just being a little bit, yes, I am. And don't call me Shirley. I'm just being a little goofy. But yeah, he says Dungeons and Dragons as if Wizards Coast bullshit is the only Dungeons and Dragons that has ever existed, which is absolutely amazing when you consider there's been like 7 distinct editions. But anyway, um, in my humble opinion, Mr. J. Scott Garrity, the only real Dungeons and Dragons is AD&D First Edition. So there you go.
Quest from the Endless Staircase. There's this part where it's like, it goes into like pages and pages of detail about protecting the staircase. And you're like, wait, you're talking about if player characters tried to destroy the staircase? Like literally the thing that's on the cover? And they're like, yeah. Like if your player characters are going to try to destroy literally the main part of your narrative, here's what you do, right? And I'm like, why are they putting this in here? And I realized, D&D has really built this system for terrible players, for to
D&D didn't build the system because the book I showed you is D&D. Now, Wizards of the Coast has been working on a system that can deal with the mouth breathing artards that play that game and think it's good. You know, like the 6th edition, which is a joke. I mean, come on, you're talking about a game where one of the big selling points is going to prom or working at a coffee shop or something. I mean, really? That's your idea of an adventure game? That's your idea of being a hero? I'm a half tiefling, half bird person, whatever, and I'm going to prom with my trans lady elf, uh, whatever she is. It's like, it's ridiculous, guy. Come on. It's ridiculous. You know it's ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous. Everybody knows it's ridiculous. Um, the creators of 6E 6E Wizard of the Coast fantasy role playing game, because it doesn't deserve to be called Dungeons and Dragons, is basically like a skin suit of the real game being worn by a group of horrible human beings. And that is, in my honest opinion,
engage and keep terrible players that will try actively to destroy your narrative, right? And Dungeons and Dragons doesn't get rid of any of them. They're like, here's some advice for how to keep them at the table. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is
another interjection. It's not your narrative. Narrative is created by player action. If the DM thinks that they have their narrative and the players have to do what the DM, has predetermined for them to do, that is what us old school DMs call railroading. And nobody likes that. That's like considered to be a really bad thing, right? Because you're pretty much talking about ways of taking away player agency. Whereas I would say, as a actual D&D player, a guy who plays AD&D, if the players want to try and destroy the staircase, let them. And when the staircase collapses down 1,000 feet with them on it, they can roll some new characters. And hopefully they'll learn from that experience, maybe to be a little bit less special ed.
I just listened to Ghostfire Games weekly podcast. They have a great podcast, but they give some very bad advice on it. And this week they had a specific, their regular crew is Sean Merwin, brilliant guy, Ben Burns and Dale Kingsmill. They brought in this guy named Brooke this week, and
I don't even know who any of these people are.
And he said, he was like, they were talking about bringing players together, right?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, well, not only do you need good players, right, but you need them all to gel together.
It helps.
Right? And I was like, what? And so he was saying, not only do you need the best players, right, just beautiful, wonderful human beings, right?
Well, I'd hope you had friends,
but they all have to gel together. It's not okay to have just 5 great people at the game, right? At the campaign. They need to gel together. Now, What frustrates me is this is just bad math, right? Like, so first of all, many people are running 4-hour tabletop role playing games.
For me, right? It's minimum.
And
4 hours.
So right out of the gate, you are going to be hard pressed just to get people to come and play a tabletop role playing game.
Not at all.
First of all, most people don't even know what a tabletop role playing game is. And they do know what Dungeons & Dragons is. They know the name Dungeons & Dragons. We learned when Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves came out that they don't even know what it is. Many people thought it was a video game. Many people thought it was a board game.
Well, it's because 5e mainly gained a lot of its popularity because of Mercer and crew. We'll see how everything goes now that they've decided they're going to switch over to their own game. We'll see. Maybe 5e will stay, or 6e now will stay relevant, or maybe it won't. I'm honestly super interested about it, because as the kind of guy who has theorized often that the critter community makes up a huge portion of the vocal 5e supporters. Not that any of them play, because most of them don't, but that doesn't keep them from being very vocal supporters of 5e, right? So will the critters continue to be super 5e fans, or will they go to Candelabra Obscurum or whatever that game is? That is going to be an amazing experiment to see happen, an event, and then I will finally get to know once and for all if the popularity of Wizards of the Coast's skin suit game was due to the game actually being good or due to, normies wanting to watch Matt Mercer and crew pretend to play D&D or 5e. We'll see. But as far as finding a group of players, though, that's not hard. Maybe it is where you live, but where I live, there's a severe shortage of dungeon masters. I mean, I can get 8 to 10 players every week for 4+ hours a session. And some of our campaigns go for years. So I don't know what you're doing wrong, man.
Many people confused it with LARP, right? Like many people don't even know what Dungeons and Dragons is. So when you're gathering your table, not only like first of all, the idea that you're going to get 5 good people is ludicrous, and this continues to be taught. Like one of my favorite games, I would say, yeah, one of my favorite tabletop role playing games is Blades in the Dark. I love it. It's brilliant. It was written by John Harper, but he has a problem. This thing was built. That game is virtually impossible to play with regular people, right? And the reason why was everybody he play tested with, I'm fairly certain, tell me if I'm wrong, they were all TTRPG designers. You can see it all over the game, right? And so and his game has this energy. They're like, make sure you get the right people at the table. Good people, right? And then this guy is going further and saying that they all need to gel together. This is ludicrous. You can barely get 5 people together to play tabletop role playing because this is extremely niche, right? Now you're saying, oh, and they all need to be just beautiful, wonderful human beings.
See, this is like interesting to me that in the world of Scott Garrity, getting 5 halfway decent human beings together to play a role-playing game is like an insurmountable ask. Meanwhile, all around the whole world, there are people playing role-playing games, Call of Cthulhu, Free League stuff, whatever. And they manage to get 5, 6, 7, 8 people together all the time, no problem. So is it possible that the problem here isn't the players or the game? Is it possible that Gariby's issue is himself? Like, he's speaking for all DMs, but is it possible that him personally can't get 5 decent people together, but every DM I know of can? So, I mean, not trying to be super insulting here, bro, but I mean, you know what they say is if it smells like poop everywhere you go, check your feet. Check your feet. Don't try to blame it on anyone else. Chances are it's you. So if you're having these tremendous problems keeping players and getting good people to join in your games and stuff, yeah, you might want to look at what you're doing, because whatever it is you're doing is not good. And also what you said about running games for 4 hours. I know you like to run games for 2 hours. It's like, is 2 hours like the limit in which the people can tolerate you, or what? Like after 2 hours, all of the people who are in the games you run are like, I gotta leave now, because no one should be forced to spend more than 2 hours with Garrity. I mean, is that what's going on? Have you asked that? I mean, yeah, because when you encounter a problem with the situation, the wise man first examines himself, right? If something is just continually not working out, the first thing to do is to examine what you're doing. Not what anyone else is doing. You examine what you're doing. You make sure you're doing the right thing. And it sounds to me like you are absolutely not doing the right thing. You're definitely. I mean, if you can't get those people together for 4 hours, that's on you, bro. Maybe you shouldn't have made Charisma your dump stat. You know what I'm saying? Keeping it gaming related, I guess. Because if you were more of a leader, a little bit more charismatic, a little bit, more inspirational, then people would be thrilled at the idea of being able to come over and game at your table for 4 hours. That would be like the thing they look forward to every week, like at my table, where the players are constantly looking forward to the game and being like, man, can't wait till the next game. Can you believe this happened and that happened? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I mean, granted, I'm playing a better version of the game. I'm playing the original that was written by the master himself. And you're playing, the Tiny Tyke edition that was written by, by and for a bunch of people who lack the maturity to actually play role-playing games. I mean, if any of this is hurting your feelings, just make an X across your chest. But yeah, look to yourself, man. Look to yourself. If you're having these problems, don't blame the game. That's silly. One of my best friends, and he used to always say, a poor craftsman blames his tools. And I'm getting those kind of vibes listening to you talking about your games. I'm getting those, a poor craftsman blames his tools. The game you're running doesn't matter. If you're charismatic and you can roll with the punches and tell an interesting story and keep everyone interested, and just deal with what the players are up to, you should not be having the problems you're having. It makes no sense.
That's not enough. They have to gel together, right? This is ludicrous. And I think what's happening is these are all designers who are in these communities where they have tons of people because they're incredibly privileged and most of them quite wealthy.
Yeah.
And they're
incredibly
building
privileged,
like these tabletop role-playing games together in what is really a very unrealistic environment, right? And Dungeons and Dragons has done the exact opposite. It has set up its game to be played by the worst human beings, right? And if you are gathering a Dungeons and Dragons table frequently, you're going to get some bad people at the table, right? And what I love about Dungeons and Dragons is like, don't send them away.
You can tell the bad ones because they're generally going to be very, very overweight and have multicolored hair. That's your first clue. If you're running D&D, say for Adventure League, if a player sits down at your table, whether it's a male or female, and they've got brightly colored hair, maybe a septum piercing and a bunch of stupid, pins on their coat or something, maybe an ideologically motivated shirt, that's a bad person. You don't want to have to deal with that person. Now, in my day, I have, because it was, what I did. I ran Adventure League. And so what you going to do when you got a job to do? You're going to do it well, right? But again, just listening at Garrity say he can't get 5 decent human beings together that kind of all like each other, and that it's privilege to be able to get a group of players together. If I wanted to run an online game of any game I want, like I could say, I'm going to run an online game of Baptism of Fire. I could say that tonight and have 5-10 players lined up to play. But this guy thinks that people who want their players to get along and, play longer than 2 hours. And on top of that, have at least 5 or more players is somehow they're living in some kind of weird fantasy world. It's like, come on, Scott. What are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Fix them. And not even fix them. That's the wrong word. Make them grow, make them improve, transform them into something they're not, right? And that's what Dungeons & Dragons does. And even more than that, it very much does not require the people at the table to like each other or to gel together. Dungeons & Dragons is built for terrible, disparate people, right? And I love that. And and the reason why I'm talking about this again,
that would kind of make sense since a Wizards of the Coast fantasy role-playing game was designed by terrible people. So saying that it was made for terrible people, that's actually kind of good advertising, made by terrible people for terrible people. Wizards of the Coast, 6th edition, Of course, I'm just cracking a little bit of a joke there, but again, his point here is how if somebody's being a real jackass, you shouldn't kick them out of your game. Just let them keep playing the game, and then magically 6th edition D&D will use its magical My Little Pony powers to make them a decent person. That, of course, couldn't be further from the truth, but that's his thesis.
Is I've recently come to understand this, where many go on Twitter, look at tabletop, where you'll say, oh, you need the right people to play this with you. Throw those jerks out, right? D&D doesn't say that. It's like, keep them at the table. They play a hero long enough, they're going to stop being a jerk, right? And it's right. It's between the lines. It doesn't say it directly, but that's what Gary built, right? And the other thing where
the game that Gary keeps calling D&D is not what Gary built at all. I don't even think he would have liked it. He built AD&D First Edition, available on DriveThruRPG, a much better game with much deeper immersion, role-playing, etc. Just a much better game because it was designed by Gary Gygax, and he made a great game. Whereas the game that Gary calls D&D, but I call Wizards of the Coast fantasy role-playing game, again, it's a skin suit of the works of far, far superior developers than the ones that are currently at Wizards of the Coast. And it's just not good. The other thing is, granted, I gave my 5e stuff away a long, long time ago when I realized that just wasn't for me, right? I mean, if you just play with the first 3 core books, it's not bad. But if you start adding all the other books in, it just gets just incrementally worse. So I bet you anything. Well, no, I shouldn't bet. That's not something I'm supposed to do. But I'm pretty sure somewhere in the DMG or the Player's Handbook, there's probably a chapter or so where they discuss how to deal with problem players. And I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves, that one of the ways you deal with problem players is you ask them to go find another table. So I think just from the actual books he's talking about, that he's wrong. He's actually completely wrong that the books don't say or imply what he has recently had a vision and, thinks he's discovered. I think that the books say the exact opposite, actually. Now, granted, I only ran that version of the game for about a year or so I'm in no way a master of it, nor do I want to be. But I'm pretty sure, yes, there are rules on how to deal with problem players, and that involves politely asking them to go away. So let's not even finish up though.
Reason why I'm like it's built for disparate is more and more I think the future of understanding Dungeons and Dragons is we need to realize it's more like a sport. It's not something we should run with friends. It's just like a sports team, right? You don't get your friend Bob to play basketball with you. You get Larry. You hate him, but he can hoop, right? And that's the same thing here.
No. Unless you're doing a Friday night adventure thing like they used to do, you play D&D with your friends, dude. Come on. I mean, they're your friends, and if they express an interest in playing D&D, then you say, sure, man. We'll make you a character and we'll have a good time, man. It'll be great. Because I've known you for a long time and you're a good dude. And right? And then you and your collection of buddies, friends, whatever, you sit around the table and you roll dice and you have a really good time. That is how AD&D works. What you're talking about, I don't even know what that is or why a person would even think that way. I hate this guy, but he's pretty good at what? Rolling dice? He's pretty good at patiently sitting here and letting me railroad him through an adventure. So even though like a guy I've known half of my life, that's a member of my church group, blah, 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 he's a really good guy, wants to play, since he's not, the best when it comes to letting me railroad him through stupid adventures about being a barista. I'm not going to pick him. I'm going to pick the guy that I think is a jerk, but he's way more into being a barista than the other guy, right? That's kind of what he just said. And when you hear it said like that out loud, you realize how just absolutely batshit crazy that kind of view is. The whole point of D&D and any role-playing game for that matter, even Wizards of the Coast role-playing game, the whole point of it is to hang out with your friends, pretend to be elves or whatever, and to have a good time. That is the point. If anyone tells you there's some other point to it, those people are not people you want to game with, because there is no other point to it. You just want to hang out with your friends, relax, maybe drink some sugar-free sodas, and have a good time, in each other's company. It's like everything he's preaching is so antithetical to what Gary Gygax actually wrote. I mean, if you read the stuff Gygax wrote, he talks about getting a group of your friends together to play D&D, right? So again, it's like, what are you talking about, Scott? This is insane, man. Like, I don't care how good a person is at playing D&D. There's no way I would kick one of the players I have at my table out to let some new guy in just because supposedly, this person is a master at rolling die 20s or something, I mean, because friendship, it's reciprocal and loyalty is reciprocal. And being so willing to just cast off your friends, like you said, the basketball game thing, right? Like your buddy wants to play, but you're not picking him. You're picking, Larry because Larry's a better player. No, I'm not. I'm picking my buddy because even if we get our tails whipped, guess what? We'll have fun doing it. And why would I want to be on the same team with somebody that I don't like? I don't want to be on a team with someone I don't like. As a matter of fact, if I don't like a guy and I'm playing a sport, I want to be on the opposite team so that I can foul the shit out of him every time he steps into the paint, you know? So yeah, your whole premise is flawed, bro. Flawed.
You don't need people to gel together. You're trying to tell powerful narratives. You need people with imagination. You need people with flair, right? Not necessarily your friends. And I really think we need to start moving away from this.
You keep talking about narrative, and I don't think you understand that narrative comes from player choice, not from the DM railroading the players all over the place. And if you think the opposite of that, then you're already lost. I mean, you're already beyond help.
Nonsense then. Like, it's hard enough with a physical table game. Attracting 5 human beings is going to be hard enough. And now we're going to ramp it up another criteria, saying, oh, it's not enough to find good players. They have to gel together.
Do you just not have any friends, Scott? Real question.
That dude they had on that Ghostfire, they should have left him. That was just utter nonsense. And he was very boring. I didn't think he brought anything to the table on that show. And was actively giving bad advice, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get
my humble opinion is everything you just said was ridiculous, wrong, and absolutely the worst advice. Telling people not to hang out with their friends and acting like you can't find 5 people who get along to play a game. It's like, don't you live in the city of brotherly love? Where's the brotherly love, man? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's different, because I'm a Southerner and we tend to really go out of our way to try to be more polite and stuff and get along. But, oh my goodness, man, literally everything you just said was terrible advice. And I just pray to God that no one follows it. Play your role-playing game with your friends, have a good time. Don't if you're the DM, do not railroad people. And most importantly, again, have a good time, because that is really what it's all about.
in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.
Okay, so let me end this. Okay, so that was quite possibly some of the worst advice I've ever heard given about role-playing games in my entire life. And I'm 53 years old. So, I've been around, right? I've been playing this game for 40 years. Can you believe that? 4 decades of me playing this game. And yet, you hear people giving advice like, don't play with your friends, and I can't find 5 people to play a game. It's like, again, I already said it, so I won't belabor to the point, but if you're a DM and you can't find 5 people to play the game, that's something is wrong with you, not the players, you. There is just something drastically not right, because as the DM, you should have the charisma, the whatever it is, to be able to sell a couple of your buddies on playing a game of D&D. At least giving it a shot, and seeing if they like it. If they don't, then I mean, no harm done, right? But everything he just said was wrong. Everything he said was wrong. And also, he keeps saying D&D when he means Wizards of the Coast 6th edition, current edition, whatever. Because, not to sound like that guy, but I'm going to, D&D was written by TSR. And anything after TSR is not actually D&D. It might have the name on the cover, but that doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? It's like I said, uh, calling 5e D&D is like shoving feathers up your butt and calling yourself a chicken. It's just not how it works. So, with that said, pretty long video. I'm going to go ahead and end this and get it uploaded so that you guys can admire it. And the first thing I'm going to do is thank J. Scott Garrity for once again providing me with amazing content that I can share with the rest of the world, and for just overall being a really interesting, if somewhat odd person. That's one thing I'll say about Garrity. He is not boring. So, peace and love, guys.